Namaste, beautiful souls. Welcome back to this discussion of Arthurian tarot, and today is about the Chariot. You can see from the cards on the table that these are very different journeys depicted in each of the tarot. In Claire Duval's deck, we are looking at a connection to the sky and a journey through time, a journey through space, and this feels very Aquarian to me. In the center is Anna-Marie Ferguson's deck, and here you can see from the key title, Battle of Mountbatten, that this is a war battle. And we see here Arthur the warrior leading, driving the chariot with a black and a white horse. And on the far right is the Chariot card from John and Kathleen Matthews' Arthurian Tarot. This is a journey by sea to the underworld, and I will share a little bit of that legend with you as well. And let's get right into the central card. Arthur's seasoned warriors follow him into battle. The great speed of the chariot reflects the accelerated rate at which events unfold. There is a need at such moments of excitement to keep a cool head and harness one's emotions. This self-control is symbolized by the horses. The black and white represent the polarities of the mind and their occasionally conflicting qualities, logic and emotion, passion and reason. The horses reflect this distinction. Though not in total harmony, they are under the driver's control. No doubt this dichotomy must have plagued the men of Mountbatten. Their hearts wished to avoid the horrors of war, yet reason asserted that the invaders be driven back and boundaries be protected if they were to prevent future bloodshed. The driver is in touch with his intuitive side, symbolized by the lunar crescents that adorn his shoulders. The armored shell of the horses echoes the card's connection with the zodiac sign of Cancer. A strong sense of shared identity is symbolized by the standard, crowning the scene and reflecting the promise of glory. So, one question, something worth exploring anyway, is the dichotomy of the harnessing of one's emotions and the fact that this is a Cancer card and named in this deck to be a Cancer card, connected to the element of water, the flow of energy. Certainly, the notion of flow fits in here with the movement of the chariot, the warriors behind, and so forth. And I also notice that in all of these cards, we do see the chariot in motion, which is not typical in older decks or the Waite-Smith deck, for example. In those decks, the chariot is stationary and the charioteer is in a moment of contemplation. So that is an obvious difference here. So what about this connection to Cancer and feelings and emotions? There was another connection here that seemed to speak loudly to me, and that was the sense of identity symbolized by the standard. Well, in the Cancer journey, there is a journey back to mother, a journey to emotions, a journey to understanding our childhood trauma, perhaps, or some kind of issue that has not been resolved with mother. And I use that word as archetypal mother. It could be our mother in this lifetime, but archetypal mother for sure. So, this idea of the warrior being without emotion, having a level head, seems somewhat in conflict. And yet, Anna-Marie Ferguson also says that he moves from his intuitive side, his left side, because of the moon on the shoulder that you can see there. And interesting that the moon is on the left shoulder, but the black horse is on his right hand. So his right hand, or let's just have a closer look here. I think both reins are in his left hand because the sword is in the right. So the horses are being driven by his left hand, and we see the moon on the left shoulder. So it is not the side of action, the side of impulse and force that is driving these forces. So that's kind of cool. The journey in the Matthews deck to the underworld feels very scorpionic. And in that deck, I don't believe there are stated outright zodiacal correspondences. While Cancer is a journey through water, as is Scorpio, this feels very Samhain and dark, and some of the tragedy that came through the journey on this particular ship is very, very tragic. Matthews writes, one of the earliest British poems, The Spoils of Unwin, tells of Arthur's journey to the underworld to win the Hallows of Britain, specifically the cauldron of Pen Unwin. He sails on his ship, Prydwen, with 3 companies of men. The poem tells of the arduous journey in which they pass the 7 towers of the underworld, taking with them the cauldron of plenty. It relates the releasing of the youth who is held prisoner there, who is a type of Mabon, the divine youth of Celto-Arthurian legend. The ship returns to Britain, but only 7 of Arthur's company return to speak of their adventures. The refrain, except 7, none return, is a feature of another exploit to do with a cauldron, in which the legendary Bron the Blessed goes to Ireland to rescue his sister Bronwyn from the ill treatment at the hands of her husband, the Irish king. In the ensuing battle, the Irish reanimate their dead warriors in the miraculous cauldron of rebirth. They outnumber the British so badly that only 7 return from that adventure. Legend says that Taliesin was one survivor out of both companies of 7. There is a theme that is being carried forward from the previous card, in that there is great chivalry and fearlessness, bravery, the purpose of the great warrior. And Claire Duval, in her title page, writes, Supreme warrior, mythical king, beyond time and space, triumph over darkness. And again, this feels very scorpionic rather than a Cancer journey. And so it really gets me thinking about the relationship between the journey through the 2, 3, and 4 of Cups, the Cancer journey, and the 5, 6, and 7 of Cups, the Scorpio journey. Also, looking at Claire's deck, it makes me think about the dual nature of journeys by ship and journeys through air. So there's something quite profound that is going on in these cards. The protagonist, and you, the querent, has made a powerful decision to go forward, to understand, to explore, to journey deeper into an understanding of why I'm here, what I'm doing, what do my challenges represent. And I think looking at this through the eyes of a warrior, through the legend of Arthur and his knights, is really kind of powerful. And this is from Legend, the Arthurian Tarot. By the time of Arthur, the imperial system in Britain had collapsed. In its place stood a threadbare administrative system, facing the threat of 3 invading nations. Britain appealed to Rome for help, only to be told she must fend for herself. The Picts and the Irish Scottie tribes raided the northern borders and western shores, while the Angles, Jutes, and Saxons invaded the eastern and southern shores. Of all these, the Saxon advance was the greatest threat. It was said that their cruel ways terrorized the people of the land. Such a desperate historical context calls for and gives rise to many heroic deeds, both real and fictitious. and the Battle of Mountbatten would secure Arthur's place as a legendary Titanic leader. Although the exact date is unknown, we do know that this battle would have occurred around the year AD 500. Archaeological evidence suggests that at this approximate time, the Saxon advance was halted. It is said that a measure of Arthur's success was due to his revival of the cavalry, loosely based on the imperial model. Not only did the horse lend the advantages of speed and mobility, but the sight of mounted soldiers had a powerful psychological effect on an enemy fighting on foot. Battle dress varied according to what an individual could afford. The opulent were protected by leather jerkins, chainmail, and helmets. The rest depended upon breast and back plates of leather. The British warriors carried long swords and relied heavily on spears. The earliest known reference to the siege of Mountbatten can be found in On the Ruin of Britain, authored by a monk named Gildas, who wrote within the lifetime of some of the battle veterans, approximately 530 AD. Although this work acknowledges the achievement at Baden, it does not name the leader of the British force. It is in the collection of 12th century manuscripts, known as the History of the Britons, that Arthur is first identified as this leader. This work is commonly attributed to Nennius, a monk of North Wales, who transcribed and compiled many earlier texts to create the Historia. We learn from the Historia that Baden was the 12th battle of Arthur and his warband, continuing for 3 days and nights. It was to be Arthur's greatest triumph. Geoffrey of Monmouth draws on the Historia in creating his idealized history of Britain, the history of the kings of Britain. In this account, Arthur carried his famous sword Caliburn and his spear Ron, rallied his men, and attacked the vast army of Saxons. Both sides fought bravely, and Arthur lost many men in his effort to take the hill, and there seems no end to the battle on the summit. Seeing that the enemy still held fast, Arthur raised up Caliburn, cried out to the higher powers, and plunged deep into the ranks of the enemy. Arthur's battle frenzy inspired his men, who followed him with renewed vigor. At this point, the battle turned in Arthur's favor, and the Britons went on to victory. Legend rewards these brave veterans with a generation of relative peace. And the layers of metaphor here are many. And I think that's one of the brilliant things about this card is that we can take stories and legends, connect with them, and choose a metaphor that fits to our present situation. I just pulled out 2 other Chariot cards. The left is the Centennial Waitsmith, and on the right is the Tarot of Pierre Madanier. This is Yves Renault's Restoration. And I'm just noticing here that in the older tarot, there is some movement with the horses, and it almost appears that there is wind in the canopy above the chariot. So that's quite different from the pause in the Waitsmith. I wonder if Claire Duval is picking up on the stars in the canopy in the Waitsmith tarot. However you look at it, this is a card of journeying to discovering something about ourselves that we cannot discover, we can't understand in present circumstances. So there is a need for a shift of energy. And the degree or the drasticness of that shift of energy is going to be very personal and different depending on our situation. But I think we need to remember that this is a major arcana. So this is likely not a card that represents a trip, right? It's going to be an adventure of sorts that reveals and takes apart an issue at various layers. The painting in the Matthews deck is really well done. There is a lot to reflect on here. The powerful energy that comes from the heavens above, and the nature of the sea dragon below, the colors, the way that the boat is crashed into the rock face. I think all of this gives us pause for deep reflection of where we are at this point in our life, in our journey, and why this turning point is so important to our personal development. I don't think that I've looked at the Chariot card in terms of the planets of the decans of Cancer. We begin with Venus and a powerful connection to our earthly experience, and then we move to Mercury. And I can really feel the mercurial energy in this card, the thought, the consideration, the clarity of mind. And then we have a lunar decan, Four of Cups, right? So things kind of go sideways there. I don't know, there's so many possible ways to dissect this card. And I wish that this level of passion or unrest or drive was present in more Chariot cards. So if you have time to comment, which I would really appreciate, let me know how you feel about these life altering battles featuring Arthur as representations of our human experience in the seventh arcanum. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next episode. Namaste.